The state wishes to call Ms. Dallas Streeter to the stand.
All right, Mrs. Streeter, please come forward. All right, you may have a seat, ma'am. The witness has been sworn. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening. Can you turn to the jury, introduce yourself, and spell your last name for the record?
Hello, my name is Dallas Streeter, and Streeter is spelled S-T-R-E-E-T-E-R.
Do you know the victim, Dr. Streeter, in this case?
Yes, he's my father.
Ms. Streeter, where do you live?
I live at 22 Osage Lane in Cherokee County, state of Utah. I actually live in the guest house specifically.
So you live in the guest house. Who lives in the main house?
Precious, my stepmother.
Is Precious her real name?
And no, she goes by Precious, but her real name is Gloria Streeter.
You two live on this property. Who owns the property?
Well, my dad owned it until he was killed, but currently it's in probate, so it's up in the air whether I own it or Precious owns it.
How much is your father's estate worth that's up in probate right now?
It's about $6 million.
Ms. Streeter, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your educational background.
Okay.
Did you go to college?
Kind of. I went to Florida State, but I dropped out after a semester.
Why did you drop out?
Well, I got a little bit caught up in the party lifestyle, and I guess I just didn't have the ambition for college.
A couple years after you dropped out, did you do anything about your ambition?
I started going to therapy right after I dropped out.
What did you go to therapy for?
Depression and delusional thinking, but now I just go once a week to really just talk things out.
Even though you said you have low ambition, do you consider yourself smart?
Yes, I'm actually very intelligent. I have an IQ of 160.
Do you have a job right now?
No, I don't. My dad was still alive. I worked as a receptionist in his office, but as things are,
What do you do for money these days?
I actually live off of the trust. I get about $3,000 a month.
Ms. Streeter, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your relationship with your stepmother, Gloria Streeter, and also your father.
Okay.
What did you think of Gloria Streeter?
I hated Gloria. I still do. We don't talk unless we absolutely have to.
Why did you hate your stepmother?
Well, she only married my dad for his money.
Was your stepmother faithful to your father?
Absolutely not. She slept with everyone. She slept with tennis pros, golf
Objection, Your
pros.
Honor, irrelevant.
All right, approach. Red match. Okay, so objection based on relevancy. How's that relevant?
It shows her that she has a bias. She has an interest in the outcome of this case, and that she may have a bias towards some of the witnesses or the defendant.
Okay, you're losing me now. All right. Her objection was to the questions about the stepmother sleeping around with everybody in the neighborhood. That's what the objection is about. Now, how
Yes.
is that relevant?
Because it shows that the witness has, that's a reason that she does not like her stepmother, and would go to her bias to see her stepmother and the defendant put in jail. I know.
It's your witness stuff.
That's
so
why I
it's gonna
didn't
go
know.
too fast.
I didn't know why the.
Why would you want?
I didn't know why the
Make
defense
out.
objected to it.
I think they got some reason to object to it. It says it's not relevant to anything.
Yes, Your Honor.
You got any further argument?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sustained.
Tell me about your relationship with your father.
Well, I loved my dad, and my dad loved me.
You dropped out of school. What did your dad think of that decision?
He was very disappointed in me with that, especially with my high IQ. He really wanted me to go and become a scientist or a doctor, but I guess I just didn't have the ambition for it. And but even though he was disappointed in me, he still loved me.
I'd like to turn your attention to the conversation that you overheard on May 26th. Do you remember that day?
Yes, I do.
Tell the jury what happened that day.
Well, it started, I had gone home on my lunch break, but I actually had to park in the street because there was a pickup in the driveway.
Whose pickup truck was in your driveway?
Neither do you.
Your Honor, I'm going to show counsel what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit C for identification. Your Honor, may I have a moment to put the screen down?
All right. I assume there's no objection to the exhibit?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, very well. You may proceed.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Ms. Streeter, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize this exhibit?
I actually, I drew this for Detective Snow. It's the 22 Osage Lane property. I live there.
Does this exhibit of the property, does it fairly and accurately reflect what the property looked like on May 26th?
Yes, it is hand drawn. I'm no artist, so it's not quite the scale. But you know, everything's there, and I would say it's fair and accurate. Yeah.
Thank you. And would this exhibit aid you in your testimony today?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, at this point, the state would like to move what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit C for identification into evidence as State's Exhibit 1.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
It'll be received and you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, may I have permission for the witness to step down from the witness stand so she can utilize the exhibit on the Elmo?
May. And counsel, feel free to move to reposition yourself.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Streeter, you said that the defendant's truck was parked in your driveway. What did you do after that?
Well, I parked on the street, and then I walked back to the guest house where I live, right there.
Now, once you got into the guest house, what did you do?
Well, I had gone into the kitchen to start making my lunch, and the windows were down, so I heard people talking to them.
Whose voices did you hear at the pool?
Gator Dean's and Gloria Streeter's.
Now, how far is the pool away from the guest house?
It's only about 50 feet.
Would you mind marking 50 feet from that area? Let the record reflect that the witness has marked 50 feet between the pool and the guest house.
Noted.
Thank you, Ms. Streeter. You may go and take the stand. What were Gloria Streeter and the defendant doing at the pool?
Well, they were talking. They were completely naked, just kind of sunbathing.
Did it surprise you to find the defendant and your stepmom naked at the pool?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevant.
All right, approach the bench. We're at the bench. Okay, how's it relevant whether or not it surprised her to see stepmom? She already knows sleeps with the entire neighborhood at the pool with Gator naked.
Because the witness is able to testify that it didn't surprise her that much, the jury would then know that the witness had firsthand knowledge that the defendant
testified to that, I'm not sure it's relevant what they were wearing at the time and what they were doing, then I don't think that's an issue that's relevant to what the issue in this case is, whether there was premeditated murder or not.
Okay, well, it might kind of put things in context, so that objection's overruled.
Ms. Streeter, I'm going to ask that question that you just answered again. When you looked out of the windows of the guest house, what was the defendant and Miss Gloria Streeter doing?
They were talking, sunbathing, naked.
And did it surprise you that they were naked?
No, it didn't. It was not rare for Gloria to be out there with one of her suitors.
Is the man that was at the pool with your stepmother that day, is that man in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you mind pointing out this person and identifying him by an article of clothing?
Okay. He's sitting over there at the defense table. He's wearing a gray suit. It's Gator Dean.
Were you able to hear the conversation that those two were having?
Clear as day.
What did your stepmom, Gloria Streeter, say that you overheard?
Well, she told Henry Dean.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
All right, approach, we're at the bench. Okay, so hearsay, response?
This is an admission by a co-conspirator. It is also proves Gloria's then existing mental state that they had a motive, intent, and a plan to commit this murder. And lastly, it would also show effect on the listener, the defendant, which would drive him to commit the murder.
Response?
Your Honor, the opposing party admission, I'm not sure how that's relevant because the co-conspirator is not a party in this case, and therefore the testimony that they seem to elicit from Ms. Precious Streeter doesn't come in under that exception.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, clear one, overruled.
Ms. Streeter, could you tell the jury again what your stepmom said?
She told Gator Dean that she wanted him to go out the next time they went on a guided photography tour and to kill my father and make it look like an accident.
What did the defendant say in response to that?
He had said that he is an experienced guide, and so nobody would believe that it was an accident.
And your stepmother, Gloria, what was her response?
She said that if Gator Dean wanted their relationship to continue, that he needed to figure it out and he needed to get it done.
When was the next time after this conversation that the defendant and your father went into the refuge?
It was on the 29th, 3 days later.
And what day was your father killed?
On the 29th.
Did you tell your father about this conversation?
Yes, I did, but he didn't believe me.
Did you tell the police?
Well, my father's a pretty smart guy, so I felt if he didn't believe me, the police wouldn't, so no, I didn't.
Was your father right-handed or was he
He
left-handed?
was lefty all the way.
Your Honor, may I have a moment to confer with my co-counsel?
You may.
Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Just a moment.
You have to
No, thank you.
number down.
You can leave it up there, that's fine. I don't need it, I won't use it.
All right, counsel, now you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Dean. You came home for lunch on May 26th,
Yes, it is.
and you went to the guest house, and you overheard a conversation, the conversation between your stepmom and Mr. Dean, but you weren't outside. You were inside,
No, the windows were down.
but you were inside,
Yes.
and you were peeking our window from 50 feet away. For the record, could you speak affirmatively? Was that a yes?
Yes.
And you were 50 feet away from where Mr. Dean was.
Yes.
And let's talk about Mr. Dean. You went to high school with Mr. Dean,
Yes, it is.
and you've always hated Mr. Dean.
I wouldn't say hated him.
You wouldn't say you hated Mr. Dean?
I resented him.
Okay, you resented Mr. Dean. And in high school, you were always second to him,
Yes, that would be one.
and you weren't valedictorian because Mr. Dean was. Again, was that a yes?
Yeah.
And you weren't editor of the yearbook because Mr. Dean was.
Yeah.
And you were runner-up best athlete because Mr. Dean was best athlete. And your dad chose to take Mr. Dean for Mr. Dean to take him on that wildlife tour?
Yes. I mean, he's one of the best wildlife people in the state. Like, that's not strange.
So he's the best person to take your father out. Again, was that a yes?
Yeah.
And let's talk about your dad. You live off a trust fund that your dad provides you,
Yes.
and you get about $3,000 a month,
Yes, I mentioned that.
and you don't work.
No.
And your property, with property, your father's estate is worth about $6 million.
Yes, I had also mentioned that.
Yes. And currently you're fighting in court to see who owns that estate.
Correct.
And so going back to May 26th, you overheard a conversation.
Yes.
You overheard Mrs. Streeter tell Mr. Dean to fake an accident
Yes, and kill my father, yes.
and to kill your father on Memorial Day?
If that's the 29th, then yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But you heard Mr. Dean explain that he would be an immediate suspect.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. You heard Mr. Dean explain that he would be the immediate suspect if he did this,
Well, yes, that no one would believe that it was an accident.
and that he would be the immediate suspect.
Okay.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So you had nothing to worry about, is that right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand that question.
Were you still worried about your father?
Yeah.
But you didn't call the police?
No, like I said, I trust my dad, and he didn't believe me then, you know, I trusted him then.
And your dad didn't believe you?
No,
And he didn't believe you because he thought you were imagining things?
I guess so, but I wouldn't know.
And he thought you were imagining things because you have depression and delusional thinking?
I have had that, yes.
And you said that you loved your dad
Of course.
and you cared about him
Yes,
and he provided for you.
yes, he loved me as much as I loved him, yes.
And you remember Memorial Day
Yes,
and you were at home,
yes.
you didn't have to work,
No,
you woke up that morning
probably, yeah.
and you fixed yourself some lunch.
Yes.
But you're worried about your dad, is that right?
There's nothing I can do about it at that point.
Sure, but you didn't go on the wildlife trip with them.
No, I didn't.
Instead, you stayed at home
Yes,
and you had a day of work.
yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Streeter, you mentioned you attended a weekly therapy. Was this voluntary?
Absolutely. It was certainly not anything like court ordered or anything like that, but I certainly just wanted to make myself a better person.
Have you ever been forced to go to any kind of therapy?
No,
Objection,
absolutely
Your
not.
Honor, leading.
Sustain. Rephrase your question.
Ms. Streeter, has anyone else have you ever gone to therapy not voluntarily?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Overruled.
No.
You mentioned that you weren't a fan of Gloria.
Correct.
Did this influence your testimony?
Absolutely not.
You also mentioned that you didn't like the defendant. Did this influence your testimony?
Absolutely not.
Would you lie about the conversation you overheard?
No, never.
May I have a moment to confer with my co-counsel, Your Honor? No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ma'am, you may step down. All right, state, call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to call Officer Shannon Snow to the stand.
All right, Officer Snow, please come forward.
Please turn and introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the record.
Good evening, my name is Shannon Snow, that's S-N-O-W.
Where do you work?
I work at the Cherokee Police Department.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there 9 years, since 1986.
Did you go to college?
Yes, I went to college. I went and got my BA in criminal justice at the University of South Florida. And after that, I started as a patrol officer with Cherokee.
Did you receive any training from Cherokee County?
Well, at Cherokee, I trained as a patrol officer, and I was involved in over 30 cases dealing with homicide and other issues.
How many homicide cases have you worked on?
Well, before this case, I worked on 6, so this is my 7th case.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to tender Officer Shannon Snow as an expert in homicide investigation.
Response?
Objection, Your Honor, to that. May we approach constructively?
All right, we're at the bench.
Your Honor, the state is trying to have the witness as an expert, but the witness just testified that this is only her 7th homicide case. I don't see how that makes her an expert.
Interesting. Response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, we have covered that, Federal Rule of Evidence 702, we have covered that Officer Shannon Snow has knowledge, her criminal justice degree, her bachelor's degree. We have talked about her having training from the police academy. And as for her experience in homicide investigation, may I be given permission to ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
How many homicide investigations did you assist on as in the time that you've been an officer?
Well, like I said, as a patrol officer, over 30, mostly with homicide, primarily as a patrol officer.
Your Honor, therefore in total, Detective Shannon Snow has worked on about 37 cases thus far.
Okay, what does the rule state exactly?
The rule would require that an expert has knowledge, skill, training, and experience.
So in that case, then any detective that ever works on a homicide case that has those qualifications would be a homicide expert. That's what you're telling me?
Actually, Your Honor, in this case, Detective Shannon Snow is an expert in homicide investigation. It's not just because she went to the police academy or because she's worked on 37 cases. It's also because of her bachelor's degree in criminal justice, which gave her some background knowledge, and then because of the training she received as a police officer.
All right, overruled. You may proceed.
Now, Detective, I'm going to talk to you about Dr. Streeter's death. But before we talk about that, I want to first ask you about some of the people that you spoke to during the investigation. Do you know Dallas Streeter?
Yes, I do. We went to high school together.
Do you know Mrs. Gloria Streeter?
Precious? Yeah, I know her. She was well known. She got top billing at Colonel Bill's all-girl review. So she did a few things in her spare time.
Objection, irrelevant, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the
Okay,
relevance.
well, approach the bench. All right, we're at the bench. What's the relevancy of this?
Your Honor, the relevancy of this line of questioning speaks to Detective Snow's possible bias, which is always relevant, I would just like to establish that although she knew Mrs. Streeter before the investigation and may have had some opinions about Mrs. Streeter's source of income, that didn't affect her investigation. It was still impartial.
Yeah, but the bias part, she's your witness, right? You called her, don't you vouch for her credibility, calling her?
Well, Your Honor, we would just like to establish that there is no existing bias that affected the investigation.
Got anything else you wanna argue about that?
Mrs. Streeter's, her occupation is not relevant to the testimony of Detective Snow. It's not relevant to this case.
All right, overruled.
Now, Detective Snow, just to backpedal a bit, can you please tell the jury what Colonel Bill's all-girl review is?
Well, it's generally a place that doesn't have a very good reputation. It's where all the lowlifes hang out. They pay strippers to do lap dances for them, and it's generally known that all the strippers that work there are prostitutes on the side.
Do you have any feelings about this that stem into your work as an officer?
No, of course not. I approach every case objectively.
Okay, so Detective Snow, we're going to shift gears now, and we're going to talk about Dr. Streeter's death. Do you remember May 29th, 1995?
Yes, I remember that day.
And in the course of your investigation, did you arrest anyone for the murder of Dr. Streeter?
Yes, I did.
Is that person in this courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
Could you please point to that person for the purpose of the jury?
Sure. He's sitting over at defense counsel table in the gray suit and the blue tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that Detective Snow has identified the defendant.
Noted.
Now, Detective Snow, what happened that morning?
Well, that morning I received a call around 9 o'clock in the morning to go to Loyola General Hospital, where I was on my way there, got there around 9:20, and I found that Dr. Streeter was dead from a gunshot wound to the back.
Is Loyola General Hospital in Cherokee County?
Yes, it is. It's here in Sutter.
Once you got to the hospital, what did you do next?
Well, once I got to the hospital and I discovered, what had happened, I had a deputy notify Dr. Streeter's family of his death, and I also ordered that his body be transferred to the coroner for autopsy.
After asking a deputy to tell Dr. Streeter's family that he'd been found dead, what did you do?
Well, after that, I was in the hallway and I noticed that Henry Dean was standing there, and I asked him what happened, and he said it was an accident. And then I asked him, if he knew anything about it, and he said that he would agree to walk with me to his truck to show me the gun that was in his truck.
What did you find in the defendant's truck?
Well, I found the gun, and it had 4 rounds. 2 of them were loaded, and 2 of them were empty shells. And I searched the general area of the truck. I didn't find anything, but I'm assuming that whatever was there had been washed away because it rained the previous day.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with an exhibit?
You may.
I am now handing Detective Snow what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit E for identification purposes. Detective Snow, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's the gun that I retrieved from Henry Dean's truck.
How do you recognize it?
I recognize it because it has this little tag right here. It says SS and the date. Those are my initials and the date. So, and it has, I kept it in my evidence locker the entire time. So I definitely know this is the gun.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as May 29th, 1995?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would now like to move into evidence what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit E for identification purposes as Exhibit 2.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, have you received this, State's Exhibit 2?
Let the record reflect that I am now showing Exhibit 2 to opposing counsel. Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Now, Detective Snow, did you find anything else in the truck?
No, I didn't find anything else in the truck besides the rounds that were in the actual gun itself. I didn't find anything else in the truck.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with an exhibit?
You may proceed.
I am now handing Detective Snow what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit F for identification purposes. Detective Snow, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
These are the 4 loaded rounds and the 2 empty shells that I found inside the gun in the truck.
How do you recognize it?
Once again, I recognize it because it has my initials SS and the date, and I kept all this evidence intact and in my evidence locker. So.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as May 29th, 1995?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would now like to move into evidence what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit F for identification purposes as Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, have you received State's Exhibit 3 and you may publish it.
Let the record reflect that I am now showing Exhibit 3 to opposing counsel and now showing to the jury. Now, Detective Snow, after you searched the defendant's truck, did you ever see Dr. Streeter's body?
Yes, I did. At the day that the autopsy was performed, I saw it.
Did you notice anything unusual?
Yes, I noticed something on his arm. It was pretty unusual.
What did you notice?
The word murder was written on his arm in blood.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with an exhibit?
You may.
I am now showing the witness what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit B for identification purposes. Detective Snow, what is this?
It's a photograph of the body during the autopsy with the word murder on his arm, on Dr. Streeter's arm.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the way Dr. Streeter's body appeared that day?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would now like to admit what has previously been marked as State's Exhibit B for identification purposes as Exhibit 4.
Any objection?
No objection.
It'll be received. And you may publish.
Let the record reflect that I am now showing Exhibit 4 to opposing counsel and publishing to the jury. Now, Detective Snow, you say that when you showed up at the hospital, you saw Mr. Dean there. Do you know Mr. Dean in any way?
Yes, I know Henry. We went to school together.
Did he tell you anything?
He didn't say anything to me after he took me to his truck. We agreed to meet the next morning. He did not show up and he did not call. And after that, I found out that he had retained counsel. He lured up pretty quickly. So I tried to talk to him through his lawyer. His lawyer told me he would not say anything to me. And then we agreed that he would take me over to the swamp where the alleged accident had occurred.
Did you go to the swamp?
Yes, I did.
Did you find anything there?
No, I didn't find anything there.
Did you find any signs of an accident?
No, no signs of an accident. We sent swimmers in there to look into the swamp to see if there was anything, and we didn't find any signs of anything.
Did you ever find the doctor's Nikon camera?
No.
Thank you, Detective Snow. Your Honor, a moment to confer with my co-counsel. Detective Snow, in the course of your investigation, did you do anything else?
Well, at 6 p.m. that same day, I decided to go to Gator Dean's house to try to talk to him one more time. And I pulled up and I walked over to the driveway and I found that he was burning something in front of his cabin.
Did you get a look at what he was burning?
Yeah, it was a piece of gray colored carpet and it had like a red discolored stain on the front, on the center of it.
What did you do?
Well, I asked him to stop doing what he was doing, and he continued pouring gasoline on it, and he ordered me off the property. And since I didn't have a warrant, I left.
Thank you, Detective Snow. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Detective Snow, my name is Julie Redkay and I represent the defendant Henry Dean. Now, you knew Henry Dean?
Yes, I did.
Went to high school together?
Yes.
Mr. Dean was popular?
Yeah, I would say he was.
Didn't like Mr. Dean?
I wouldn't say I had any negative feelings towards him. He was Mr. Everything in high school.
Okay, so that's a no?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about the incident of May 29th. You were at the hospital after Dr. Streeter died?
Yes, I was.
And at the hospital, Henry Dean told you about the accident?
Yes, he did.
You looked for blood in the cab and the bed of the pickup truck.
Yes.
Didn't find any?
No, I didn't find any.
Your Honor, a second to confer with co-counsel,
You may
please.
proceed.
Nothing for Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Oh, hold up 1 second there, Miss Witness. I didn't tell you to leave yet. You gotta get
Yes,
back
Your
up
Honor.
there and see if we got any redirect.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, state any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just a few quick questions.
You may proceed.
Now, Detective Snow, you stated that you knew the defendant in high school,
Yes.
but you don't have any issues with him.
No, no issues. I mean, he was Mr. Everything in high school. He had a reputation for being highly involved in a lot
Your
of
Honor,
different
objection,
stuff.
asked and answered.
Yeah, it sounds like we kinda covered this already. You got anything else?
I'll move on to my
Sustained.
last question, Your Honor.
All right,
Please explain for the jury the last time you saw the defendant.
Well, last time I saw the defendant, he was burning a piece of carpet in front of his cabin. And
Your Honor, objection, asked and answered.
yeah, did you ask any questions about that on your cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's a little bit beyond the scope of the cross too, so sustain. Anything else?
No further questions, Your
All right,
Honor.
thank you. All right, now you may step down. Thank you very much. All right, what says the state at this point?
Your Honor, the state has a list of stipulations that the state and the defense have agreed, and we would like at this point to read some of them to the jury, or provide you a copy and have you read the list out to the jury.
All right, members of the jury, you're about to hear what we refer to in court as stipulations. Basically, that's an agreement between everyone that these facts have been established. Therefore, you need require any additional proof of these facts. All right, state, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 5 stipulations. The first one is that the defendant is, first one is that Dr. Streeter is dead. The second one is that the path of the bullet through the deceased's body reflects no angle. That is, the entry and exit of the bullet was at the same location from the front and the back. The third stipulation is that the victim would have survived 20 to 30 minutes following the gunshot wound. The fourth is that there were no stipplings or powder burns on the victim's clothes or the wounds. This would indicate that the gun was fired from at least 4.5 feet away. The fifth stipulation is that a very recent and deep laceration to the deceased's left thumb was noted, and it was caused by a sharp object such as a knife, sharp glass, sharp metal, or sharp plastic. That's all the stipulations we have, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. What says the state?
At this time, the state rests its case.
All right, very well then, members of the jury, we're gonna give you a little comfort break while we address some matters outside of your presence. Please don't discuss the case among yourselves. You may see the attorneys out in the hallway. They'll probably ignore you. Understand that they're not being rude. They're just following the court orders. All right, and we're gonna give you, let's say, 15-minute break, since this is right in the middle, because the attorneys will need a little break as well. All right, so at this point, I'm going to excuse you for your recess.